Hello and welcome back to the Paranormal Podcast. My name is Dan Pasella, co-founder, lead investigator, Orange County, New York Paranormal, and welcome. Welcome to the first podcast of the summer. It is officially summertime, and definitely getting warmer out there, but also for folks like us, it's exciting because we tend to do a lot more investigating in the summer months than we do in the winter. In the northern climates, it can get a little chilly. We do some things, but summer is definitely a welcome sight for us. And obviously, as we continue to do our investigations, we also continue doing this podcast. So for those of you who've been with us since the beginning, welcome back. If you're new to the festivities, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Tell your friends. We're available on every single podcast platform there is. There is also a video version of it available on Facebook and on YouTube that comes out a day or two after the audio version of the podcast drops. Also, if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, you can follow along with all those summer investigations we'll be doing. Next couple weeks are going to be really busy. And of course, all of it is also available on our website, www.orangecountynyparanormal.com. So there are a lot of ways to follow us and a lot of ways to reach us. And it is through those many ways to reach us that we get the theme or topic of today's episode. We do a lot of events. We have a lot of social media accounts. And as a paranormal group or any paranormal group, you get a lot of questions. And we get a lot of really interesting questions, and they tend to pile up. And I thought, you know what? First podcast of the summer, let's just roll out a summer mailbag. If you've been with us for a while, you know that occasionally I like to roll out some of the more interesting questions. We answer every single question that comes to us on a one-by-one basis, but we often get some really fascinating questions that I feel are worth sharing the answers to everyone, because they're very likely questions that you may have had about what it is that we do. We are always happy to answer any kind of questions that you might have for us. You can submit those questions through all of the means that I talked about a minute or so ago, through social media, through our website. There's a contact, and you can also email us as well. But I wanted to cover some of these because I thought some of these were really interesting, and the answers, as everything in the paranormal, there's no such thing as a simple answer to anything in this field. And I hope that if you have thought of this or have had a question like this, hopefully I will be answering a lot of your questions out there, and maybe even answering some questions that you didn't even know you had. Since day one, the most common email or Facebook message or Instagram message or contact through the website that we get is some version of, I think my home or business is haunted. What can I do myself to investigate this? And that really should be the first step, especially if it's your home. But if it's your property, you need to take an interest in it yourself. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's 10,000 paranormal groups out there who'd love to help you, and we're among them. But it's more personal for those who own or work in a location. So I love when people want to take the initiative and do it themselves. And there are things you can do. You don't have to bring, a dozen suitcases of gear like we do. You don't have to invest in all the, the paranormal technology. You don't have to do that. I've done an episode in the past about, inexpensive and practical ghost hunting equipment that doesn't have to be that ridiculously expensive. And honestly, your phone can do most of the things that you really need to do to conduct a simple investigation yourself. You can get a digital recorder. They're not expensive, but to be honest, the ones on your phone or the apps you can download, they're just as good. And I always advise people, look, do some EVP work in your house. you know, and if and it's not complicated. There are some basic things to remember if you're going to do an EVP session in your own home. You know, you have to keep it short, between 1 to 2 minutes, is what we try to do. When you ask a question, you have to leave space for an answer. So when we do an EVP session, we generally will ask about 4 questions or 5 questions over the course of 2 minutes and leave a very pregnant pause in there of about 20 seconds or so, at least, between questions, because, you know, spirits don't always answer things quickly. We don't know how they perceive what it is that we're saying or you're saying. So we leave them a wide berth. And oftentimes you'll get an answer to an earlier question later in an EVP session, just because of how the wavelengths sort of are communicating with each other. But you can do that in your own house. You can just sit down and you can ask questions and you can review it yourself. You know, these EVPs, you know, are not that hard to hear, especially when they're obvious. Class A level, you know, clear voices, whispers, sounds. And this way you can actually do this and ask some of the questions you have, because if you have me come in, I have to ask you what you want me to ask the spirit. I don't have a problem being the middleman, but if you are going to take initiative, you can do it yourself with digital recorders. I've advised people to leave a recorder or their phone recording overnight in the area of their house that they think is haunted. And that actually is a really good way to determine whether whatever's going on in your home or business is intelligent or residual. Because intelligent haunt, that tends to respond to things, whereas residual, that's just a tape recorder. It plays over and over and over again. And it's interesting, we do find that a lot of the folks who, you know, report back to tell me how they did with what they did, we find a lot of it's residual in many cases. So, but those are ways just through digital recording. And if you know what, and honestly, if you want something better than listening to it on your phone, there are free programs out there. Audacity is a great program that you can use. That's free, by the way, to download, and you can upload it onto your computer. Works for PC, works for Mac, and it'll actually show you wavelength, and you can isolate, and you can, you know, noise reduction if you have to. You can play with it like we have to do sometimes to hear something or determine something, whether something is an EVP or is not an EVP. You can also use the camera on your phone. I know camera phones are not night vision, but they don't have to be night vision. Take photos. Some of the best photos I've ever seen or we've ever captured in investigations were taken by a cell phone camera with the flash on or with the flash off. And you just have to, if you're going to do that, just make sure you take multiple photos. We call them bursts, you know, 1, 2, 3, without moving your hand, because paranormal activity tends to move. So when we're analyzing photos, we like to look at all 3 taken within about a second of real time to see, you know, what's different here. One of these things is not like the other. And when one of these things is not like the other, that's when we take a closer look. It's unfortunate. I've received some amazing, amazing photos from people, but it's only one photo. So I don't know what it looked like a half a second before or a half a second after. And when you don't have when you don't have enough information, or you don't have that kind of ability to see the movement, we pretty much have to toss out all of that. And I hate writing people back and saying, did you take more pictures at the same time? Burst photography is a must, whether you're, you know, concerned your house is haunted, or whether you're at a haunted event or your ghost hunt event or whatever you're doing. Always take photos in groups of 3 or 4 within very short periods of time without moving your hand as much as possible. You'll be able to not only prove a lot more, but you'll also be able to debunk a lot more. Now, if you want to, you know, look into what's going on in your home, and it's not necessarily doing it yourself, but there are psychic mediums, and I've known many people who have invited a psychic medium into their home. A legit psychic medium, like someone who has, you know, these it's really no way to really test it, but somebody who, you know, you've vetted. It's not like your third cousin on somebody's side who feels things, like, because you don't want to mess around, because, you know, you don't want folks planting ideas and seeds that there's something going on that isn't. And, you know, a legitimate psychic medium can really help you understand what's going on in your home. It's just finding the right person to come through and not only be able to tell you what's going on, but also be able to give context. So if you caught an EVP and then you want to do the medium, that's probably the best way to do it, because then, you know, if you catch something, then you can kind of give some idea of where the energy is. And while the evidence might not paint a full picture, a legitimate psychic medium can absolutely help fill in the blanks on some of that. But I cannot emphasize enough that you must vet, and you must make sure that the person you're calling in is legit. Because they're, you know, and I'm not saying people do it illegitimately to fraud. I mean, those people exist in every field, including paranormal investigating. But there are a lot of people who feel they have the different, a stronger level of the gift than they actually have sometimes. So you just got to be careful. Here's some things that I tell people never, ever do. Don't open doors you don't know how to close. Don't do Ouija boards or seances or rituals unless you're trained to do so. And by the way, paranormal investigators, most of us aren't qualified to do those things. Some are. Again, gotta vet. But some are. But don't do things without an expert on hand. And we are not all experts. Unfortunately, not enough of us are willing to admit we're not experts, but we're not. I don't recommend doing it at all, but that's only because I'm not qualified. I don't know how to close these doors. I'm not an expert on that. You can find people who know what they're doing in these realms. But again, as I said before, with paranormal groups, with psychic mediums, with any of these specialists in Ouija boards or demonologies or dowsing rods or crystals, just make sure you're vetting to make sure you're getting the person in there that will help you understand it and can also help you understand how to live with what's going on. Because that's most of the time, that's it. You're going to end up having to live with whatever's there. There are ways to banish, if you will. And again, I'm not an expert on that either. And there are experts and people who know how to do that too. But if you want to do it yourself and learn more about your haunted area of your home or business, you absolutely can. I recommend doing the things I talked about earlier. If you're going to go deeper, just make sure you know who you're bringing in. The second question I want to answer here that we get is a sort of a branch off of the first one, which is we get a lot of submissions to the website and emails and messages on Facebook and on YouTube that are basically, hey, I captured something on my phone camera, my Ring camera. What is the best way for me to look into this in depth and to actually like kind of figure out what it is and how to do it myself? Again, I love the initiative. I love when people are interested in what's going on around them. It's fantastic. It's how most paranormal investigators actually got started. It's weird how it's changed over the years, because cell phone cameras are really good now. They weren't always. Even back when we first started, the cell phone cameras weren't as good as they are now. So if you're doing this with a modern cell phone, with all the cameras that they have, it is easy. If you capture something, there are video editing apps on, on Apple Store, on Google Play Store, on the whatever device you're using store, that you can download. You can isolate it, you can slow it down, you can speed it up, you can add a filter, you can darken it, you can lighten it, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. The problem with the older cameras is that you can't make resolution better easily. There are ways to remaster things. That's a lot of technology a lot of us don't have access to. So for instance, recently somebody sent me a video that they captured about 10 years ago, and they were just going through some old videos and they happened to find it, and they said, what program do you use? And I looked at the clip and I said, well, the problem with that clip is you can slow it down and you can zoom, into the small part, but because the resolution of the video isn't as good, it's always going to be a little blurry, and it's always going to be a little hard to tell what you're looking at. That's also part of the problem you get with Ring cameras and like trail cameras. We get a lot of folks who send us Ring camera footage of things they captured, and those things capture some really cool stuff. But there's a problem there too, is it's not necessarily the resolution that's the problem with a Ring cam or a trail cam or some trail cams. It's the frames per second. A lot of Ring cams shoot at a 15 frame per second, whereas a regular video camera or camera shoots at 30 frames per second. I'm not trying to be technical here, but when you slow it down, most video editors go at 30 frames per second that you can look at each individual frame. Well, when you break that down in a lot of video editing programs, you're skipping time. So the Ring camera, it's not a... It takes it in shots more than it's taking it in full motion when you slow it down. So you're not able to see the true path of anything without having those hiccups in the middle. It's also not, again, as I said before, it's a resolution thing. Now, I'll tell you, some trail cams are amazing now. It seems like every time I buy a new trail camera, I miss the next best one by a day. But we do utilize trail cams a lot. They're very good for outside investigations, because outside stuff is I could do a whole episode on how annoying and complicated outside technical paranormal investigations can be. In fact, maybe I will. But because of the resolution issues and the frame rate issues that are not a user error, it's the technology that's available at the time. If it's an older video or it's on one of those things, it is really hard sometimes to make those things clearer because they weren't as clear to begin with. So my advice is, if you're going to take video around your house, or you want to be an amateur investigator or a regular investigator, or you're going to a ghost hunt event or whatever you're doing, your cell phone camera is probably the best tool that you have right now in terms of resolution, unless you're going night vision, unless you're going all in. But yeah, if you got something on a Ring camera or a cell phone camera or something like that, the best thing to do is just pop it into a video editing program. There are a lot of free ones out there that you can get on the app stores and stuff, and look at it that way. And nice thing about doing it on your phones, you can take screenshots really easily. So if you get that screen, click, and you can really do a deep dive. It just, how deep is going to depend on resolution and frame rate. Well, that was a lot of technical stuff. I hope there's still someone listening to this. If I got a little geeky there, I'm sorry. I'm a tech junkie when it comes to I love the tech of the paranormal. I love the camera tech. So if I went down the rabbit hole and got a little nerdy for everyone, I apologize. So for the next question I want to handle here, I got this question in an event. I think back October. Yeah, it had to have been then. And it didn't make the last mailbag I did, because I already had a bunch lined up. It's not doing a mailbag after our October events is easy because we get so many questions during those. But I thought this was fascinating. And I've been asked it more than once. I've been asked even on a podcast or two I've been on as a guest. I've been asked about this. That do we have a set pre-investigation routine? And we do. We do. It's not official or anything. We don't have like a boxes that we check off. Okay, we did this. Okay, we did this. It's interesting because the routine is both half fun and half preparation. So because we're not a large television show and we all have full-time jobs, we generally don't get to where we're doing the investigation until the afternoon before it. We don't have the ability to be there for 3 or 4 days. It's a one-day shot. So depending on who's joining us, because the way our paranormal family works is we say, hey, we're going here, and whoever wants to come, here's where, here's when, who's joining Emily and I. And whoever's coming, we almost always do a dinner at a local restaurant with like all the investigators who are coming. Usually there's between 3 or 4 of us. And it's become one of my favorite parts of the whole day, because it gives us a chance to just unwind and to catch up. And as I said in a previous episode about paranormal groups and why they fail, the reason that I think we're still going strong is because everybody involved in this, we all genuinely like each other. We like each other's company. And that's so important. Like, it's one, you have to like each other outside of the haunted house to have any kind of chemistry or camaraderie inside the haunted house. So that is always a lot of fun. We laugh, we blow off some steam, we get ourselves, and when we get to the location, we're all very relaxed. And that's important. That's an important part of the whole investigative process. It is very important to come in my opinion, with as little baggage as possible. To be worried about as little as possible. Just go in having just, open mind. You just had some fun, and you shared some laughs with some friends, and now it's time to go to work. And when we go to work, the night goes fast, and everyone does something a little different in our paranormal family, and I imagine every paranormal group out there, everybody has their own routine. I can only talk to what my specific routine is, but I'm pretty sure my specific routine is not that different than any other group's, lead investigator and lead technical person or people. We all probably do the same things. Whether it's in the same order or not, who knows? But here's my routine, because I can only speak to me. First of all, the first thing I have to do is find where the home base is going to be. And it's easy to do if you've investigated the place before. Once, if you've never been there before, you kind of leave the equipment outside until you know where that's going to be. You have to have a home base. You have to have a place that you can go to take a break, to, put new batteries in something, because batteries die all the time, or to just, take a breather, or, to recover. Maybe you got spooked by something. You just need to take a breath. It's important to have that. It's also important to have a place to put all the gear, and that the lights are probably going to be on a lot, because, I'm good at changing batteries, but in pitch black dark, I'm not as good as I am in light, which is true for everybody. So once we've established where that base is going to be, I walk the entire location. If it's first time, we're usually doing a tour anyway, so it's easy. But even if we've been there, we've investigated some locations a half a dozen times. I still walk the entire location before I unpack anything, because things move around. A lot of places we investigate are businesses. Businesses change displays. Museums change exhibits. You have to know what's different than when you were there last time. And for me, I review all the video evidence, so I've got a pretty good idea of what these rooms looked like before, because I stared at them for 6 hours when I was reviewing video evidence. So as I walk around, I make a mental note of where I want to put this camera, where I want to put this camera, where do I want to use this, where do I want to use this. I used to put tape down, like a little tiny piece of tape, because when we first started this, I would forget where I said I wanted to put the cameras. I have gotten a lot better at it. So now I don't even need the tape. I know what I'm going to do. I know how many cameras I have to build, which is why it's important to do the walkthrough before you build everything. Because we have 13 cameras. We don't use 13 cameras every single time. So once the walkthrough's done, we'll interview some people who work there. That's usually what Emily, Tim, Tracy, Rhea, or Margot will be doing as they talk to the people who work there, if we have access to them, or if, and while they're doing that, I'm building the cameras, I'm getting the equipment out of the cases, I'm sort of, expediting. Here's what's going to go with this group, here's what's going to go with this group. If we have an experiment we're going to try, I make sure everything's charged up and ready to go, and where we're going to do that, so that when we start, we're not fumbling around. Everybody knows what they're going to have. Everybody has what they need to have, so that we can start. And once we get going, boom, we can just get going, kick it off, and go to work. The part of my routine that's evolved over the last several years is right before we begin, usually about 20 minutes before. I've started once everything's built, I've started taking a step away and just going off somewhere isolated. whether it's by myself, in the house, or in the business, or it's on the front porch, or wherever it is. I get away from it all. And I kind of collect my thoughts and soak it all in. And I think the reason that that's come into my routine is that I've really learned over the years to appreciate the privilege of what we get to do in some of the places that we get to do it in. And when we're investigating, for me, as any lead investigator of any paranormal group will tell you, you feel like kind of a taskmaster sometimes. You know, you feel like you're bossing everybody around, or that you're responsible for every piece of equipment that's working. You got to make sure the battery's right. You got to make sure this is right. Got to make sure this is right. And I found that it was taking away from my ability to just exist with the location. So before we begin, I step away and I try to shed that taskmaster mentality so that we begin, so I can go in with a clear and open mind, not worried about the equipment. I just try and become kind of one with the place that we are in and exist around it. And that is the best part of being a paranormal investigator. It is being able to just be in a place and just feel a location, to feel what's going on around you. And I've learned to appreciate that over the years, and I've made it part of my routine because I found that I wasn't enjoying it as much. And I started wondering why. And I'm like, you know why? Because you're too worried about the checklist. And the investigation starts, you're still on the checklist. So now, and I urge everyone to do this, if you are, you know, in a group, or if you're forming a group, or whatever you're doing, before you begin, take a moment, if nothing more, to appreciate where you are, what you're getting to do, the people you're getting to do it with, and the location and the atmosphere that you're in. And sometimes it's hard to find a space without anybody, because as this next question alludes to, we tend to have a crowd with us sometimes. And this actually was a comment that came through on YouTube not too long ago, and I really liked it. And the question was, you seem to have a lot of amateur investigators in your videos. Why do you use them, and do they get in the way? And the answer to do they get in the way is yes, and it's great. It is absolutely great. And it's funny, I did like that that they called them amateur investigators. Like, I went to college for this. Like, we are all amateur investigators, really, unless you're getting paid for it, and if you are, more power to you. But the people who are with us are not just people we found, you know, at the local convenience store and said, hey, you want to go, you know, investigate the paranormal. The people that are with us are people who have a connection to the location. They're the owners, they're the managers, they're the staff. They're the ones who know the history and they know the stories of the location. Why would we not want that with us? We have walking historians with us. The spirits also know them. They don't know us. Familiarity leads to better interactions. Dealing with the dead is not that different than dealing with the living. You're less likely to talk to a stranger than someone you already know. And we've been able to prove it. When we use these folks who are connected in our investigations, we get more evidence, we get more interaction, we get better quality evidence out of it. Why would we not? Another testament as to why we do it is that some of these people have become members of our regular paranormal family. Tim and Tracy, who investigate with us all the time, they're the owners of Grapevine Farms. When we first went up there, we said, hey, Tim, you want to come around with us? Want to investigate with us? First time he heard his name through the Phasma box, he buried his face in his shirt. But after a while, he became so fascinated with it, he's like, you know what, I'd like to go other places with you guys. Absolutely. We met Rhea and Margot through the Museum of Wayne County History. way back in like the third episode of the podcast, I interviewed Rhea about that and about that experience. Go listen to that episode. She had a lot of really interesting things to say. But when we told her, hey, do you want to go around with us? She was like, huh? Because a lot of groups didn't want her around. She actually was so excited. She said, can I call my girlfriend, have her come? That's how we met Rhea and Margot. It's how we've met a lot of the great folks. You can't be an isolationist group like that. So yes, we do have a lot of people in the videos, and it can lead to some interesting things. And I laugh when I watch the footage because I'm not always there. You know, sometimes I'm somewhere else in another part of the investigation. But inexperience can lead to some uncommon methods. And not to mention, it can also be hilarious. Being experts, and I'm doing quotations for the video, for the audio audience, you can see it if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, means sometimes we tend to overthink things. We make things more complicated than they have to be, or we think there's some method that we have to use. Many, many, many times, the folks we invite along, these amateur investigators, as the person who asked the question said, I don't think they meant it to be insulting, but, these folks, they do or say something that's absolutely ingenious. And it becomes part of what we do. Because we're like, why did we not think of that exactly? Weren't we supposed to be the experts on this? So yes, do they get in the way? Yes. Do they talk over each other? Yes. Do they break the rules where I say, please don't whisper because it's really hard for me to determine what an EVP? They absolutely do it every time. It's okay. I'll take that because of the great results we get from it from an evidence perspective and the great relationships that we've built with some really cool people who've become friends and family-like to us. It also leads to some really funny moments. I could spend the next hour talking about them. I won't do that, but my favorite one of all time is from the Gans house up in Sharon Springs. There was a bunch of people, and the Historical Society was investigating with us, which was wonderful. It was great. Check that video out on YouTube. Tim had an amazing experience there. But they are from the Historical Society. They're not folks who understand paranormal investigation that much. They've done maybe a ghost hunt or two, but they've never gone all in. There's a big difference between going to an event and doing an investigation. So we're in one of the rooms, and a very common question you ask in a paranormal investigation is, how many people are here? Very common. How many spirits are here? How many people are here? You just try to get a number, trying to establish an intelligent spirit, see if they can count. So I asked, how many people are in this room? And one of the people from the Historical Society said, oh, there are 9 people in here. Which just sent everybody into hysterics. And somebody said, no, he wasn't asking us. And we've got a lot of examples like that, but that one cracks me up just so much because it's a great example of just, you know what, sometimes you gotta laugh. Sometimes, this is supposed to be fun. And bringing these folks in who aren't always, don't have a ton of experience investigating, it's always worth it. Noise issues, whispering, and the occasional uproarious laughter, I'll take it because it just makes it more enjoyable as an entire experience as an investigator. And I was actually going to make that the final question for this episode, but I received another question through a comment, I forget what platform it was, just a day or two ago, and I'm like, oh, I want to add that in because I really like that question. And the question was, what kind of things hinder an investigation and more importantly, investigation evidence review? So when we're listening back and watching back what we caught during an investigation, what are the things that hinder it? The simple answer to that is any outside distraction. When you perform a paranormal investigation, you are trying to make the location as much of like a controlled area as you can. And It's really hard to do because a lot of locations are by roads or by other people. How dare they? Or in towns. Or so it's very hard to control everything around a haunted environment. It's also hard to control it within a haunted environment a lot of the times, because sometimes you're investigating businesses that are active. Hotels don't kick all the guests out to have us come in. They just tell us what rooms we are and are not allowed to go into because they have guests in them. So anything that disturbs that controlled environment. But I will tell you definitively, the thing that every single paranormal investigator hates more than anything in the world is noise. And you don't notice them. You don't notice all the sounds that are going on around you right now. You don't notice them. Oh, but our equipment notices them. Digital recorders, the cameras we use are so sensitive because they're trying to pick up sounds that aren't very loud in spectrums that we normally can't hear in. They pick up everything. Every car that drives by sounds like a freight train. The furnace or AC, you wouldn't think it. I mean, the group gets mad at me because, in the middle of summer, I'll be like, all right, let's kill the AC. And yeah, we're going to sweat more. But if you heard what an air conditioning unit sounds like while I'm reviewing the video, it sounds like somebody's revving a chainsaw next to the camera. It's so loud, and you don't think it's that loud. When you're there, you're like, okay, that's a little bit. But these cameras are designed to pick up everything. I hear every bark of every neighbor's dog. One time, I actually picked up an argument that the neighbors were having with each other on a camera that was in an attic. In some towns, like, Bull's Head Inn, we investigated a long time ago. The red light down there's a beeping thing that happens on the crosswalk. I was beeping in my sleep. I heard that so many times because every single camera in the building picked it up. You also don't realize how much folks' voices overlap and how much voices carry in large buildings. We were just at the Seneca Falls Historical Society, and there's a lot of there's 4 floors you're talking about there, and there's a lot of different angles and a lot of different rooms, but man, the sound travels. And even if you can't hear it yourself, that camera can. So outside distractions, you can have, we investigate at night to eliminate a lot of the distractions that exist. But noise is public enemy number 1 when it comes to the thing that screws up evidence review and just makes me just want to pull I don't have hair, but pull what little hair I might have out, because it just drives you crazy, because you can't even use it. If you've got something really loud going on, you almost have to throw out the whole tape, because you're not going to be able to pull anything out of it. Drives me crazy, and I guarantee you it drives every paranormal investigator who uses cameras and digital recorders, which is most of us. It drives us all nuts. So thank you for indulging me in answering some of the more frequently asked questions we've received as of late. And as always, please feel free to reach out with any questions you might have on Facebook, on Instagram, through our website, through our email. We answer them all. We do. I picked out 5 for this episode, but the other several dozen we've gotten over the last 2 or 3 months, I have written the person back one-on-one. There are no dumb questions. There are not. Because I guarantee you every question that you ask, I've either been asked before or I've asked it myself. So ask away. I mean, this field and its very existence is all about seeking answers to questions both big and small. So in the world of the paranormal, having a ton of questions, that's just normal. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Paranormal Podcast.